The call is being recorded. First of all, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Lynn Van Diemender, and I've had the pleasure of working with the NASA CO2 Conversion Challenge team over these many months to get to the point in the competition that we are today. I work for an agency called Common Pool, and with me, I have my colleague Jenny Adams on the phone. Today we have a short agenda, and in just a moment, I'll turn things over to John Hogan and to Don Turner from NASA to talk about the competition. But as I mentioned, the session is being recorded. We have a couple of ways you can ask questions. So we're going to do just a brief overview here, and then we're going to do a quick screen share of the submission requirements and a screen share of the Midpoint progress update page on the website in case you haven't had a chance to look at those. And then we'll open things up to Q&A. So we do have a small group today, so I think it's fine if people want to ask questions verbally, but you're also welcome to enter them in the chat box for everyone to see. So either way, we will answer as many questions as you have. We have an hour scheduled. I think it's probably unlikely that we'll go that long because we do have a fairly small group today. And then lastly, we'll just wrap things up and give you a reminder. Of course, the submission deadline is Friday, June 5th, 2020 at 5 p.m. Central. So I'll repeat that a couple of times, I'm sure, throughout the call today. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to John Hogan.
Hi, my name is John Hogan. I am here at NASA Ames Research Center, and I'm both a branch chief and a PI and a project manager of a program that's looking at being able to biomanufacture various mission-related products microbially, and we are quite interested in the ability to convert carbon dioxide into organic substrates that would then feed heterotrophic microorganisms. So this is the one of the primary reasons why this CO2 conversion challenge came about. Obviously, there's many different benefits for trying to push this this technology. As many of you know, there's a lot of effort going on internationally trying to convert carbon dioxide into generally C1 and C2 compounds. We do convert CO2 to methane on the space station, and that's part of our oxygen recovery process. We use the Sabatier system there. There are systems that make formic acid and acetate, methanol, propanol. And while these compounds are somewhat able to support heterotrophic growth, we are looking to push the envelope, so to speak, to move it towards sugars, so that we can reduce the size of our bioreactors significantly and be able to support a wide range of different microbes that we can engineer, particularly using ones that are typically called the workhorses of either yeast or things like E. coli that are highly engineerable organisms with many different tools. So that is that's the background of this particular challenge. In addition to feeding, pardon the pun, our research, of course, being able to push the envelope on just general chemical synthesis of CO2 to other compounds is something that NASA would be quite interested in for supporting long duration missions, particularly on the Martian surface, where we have a CO2 atmosphere. It's about 95% carbon dioxide with a little bit of nitrogen. We have water on the surface. So we have carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen. So we have on Mars everything that we need to make the vast majority of organic products. On the moon, we would have a kilogram of carbon dioxide per person per day. And there are areas that do have water as well. It's not a lot of nitrogen there, but so we have a lot of the components. So this is a way for us to be able to gain a greater self-sufficiency during these missions, reduce our launch mass, and create the ability to, in some cases, either produce all the products that we, not all, but a large majority of the products we need there, as well as potentially fuels, so that we can make fuels for ascent from surfaces and returning home. So that's the background for this challenge. And Dawn, did you want to start to go through some of the logistics of the project here?
Yeah, I think, Lynn, maybe we were going to share next the submission requirements, maybe?
Yes, yes, that's right. So everything that you need to know about this competition can be found on the challenge website. And Jenny there is doing a screen share of the Phase 2 application requirements. So as you can see, those are due Friday, June 5th, as I mentioned, at 5 p.m. Central. And there's a list of everything that your application needs to include. And once you have all of those components, you'll want to email that document and video to solutions, or video link rather, to solutions@co2conversionchallenge.org. And Dawn, I don't know if there's any specifics of the application requirements that you want to point out.
So for us on our end, just to ensure that each team makes sure that you include everything that is listed that you see on the screen now. Make sure you have all those elements included when you do submit it, so that we can consider it a valid submission. I'm curious, does anyone on the line have any questions about any of those 16 elements that are listed there? Questions, maybe comments, even?
Yeah, we can come back to that just in the general Q&A section as well. Okay. I think the other thing that we wanted to share here on the screen before we open it up to larger questions is just the midpoint progress report. So Jenny, if you don't mind sharing that. Yes, so actually there's a couple of, I'm sorry, I'm going to actually have you show a couple of other things. Do you mind sharing the technical specifications first? So in addition to the application, there's a list of technical specifications here. Hopefully you all have had a chance to look at, but that is really what we're after. And then Jenny, if you could also share the scoring as well. And then we'll go back to the mid-progress report. So yeah, and then also on the website, we've detailed exactly how each of the samples and the processes will be judged. So you can also feel free to ask questions about that in just a moment. But then the last thing we wanted to share with you is this midpoint progress report. And the opportunity to submit that is coming up very quickly. So in order to receive some bonus points, you can submit a midpoint progress report here. Anytime, you can submit it anytime between March 1st and Tuesday, March 31st at 5 p.m. Central. Again, the same sort of thing, please email it to solutions@co2conversionchallenge.org, and there's a listing of the information that we'd like to see in that progress report. And then you'll get a full 10 bonus points added to your final score if you submit that report. Dawn, anything you want to say about that about that midpoint progress report?
No, I think that covers it very well. Thank you, Lynn. This really is for us just an opportunity to see, you know, how well teams are progressing through their research, how well you're doing. And again, if you get the 10 points just for submitting the report, it's not really anything that we are going to grade as correct or incorrect. So it's really a gathering information exercise for us.
Great. And with that, we'll open it up to questions. So again, there's a chat box, so feel free to type something in the chat box if you prefer, or you can just unmute yourself and open it up to just speaking as well, since we have a fairly small group here.
I have one. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to ask a quick follow-up to the Midpoint report. I was wondering if there was a preferred structure for this other than answering the bullet points listed on the website.
I'll attempt to answer that, and then I'm going to let John weigh in on that. No, there's not really a preferred method. It's just sort of simple is better. So if you wanted to do it in Word, or if you wanted to do it in Excel or PowerPoint, however makes sense to you, in order to help communicate to us the information that we're asking in the midterm, that really is acceptable. Unless, Lynn, do you guys have a restriction on what type of file you can receive?
We do not. We can accept whatever you send us, and it can just be emailed to solutions@co2conversionchallenge.org as an attachment.
Great. John, did you want to add anything specifically that would benefit us?
I just want to reiterate that we would like all of those different topics to be covered in your progress report. One of the reasons that we're asking for this is to understand exactly what it is you're going to be trying to do, because part of the judging is going to be taking your samples and analyzing them. And given the wide variety of different compounds that we may obtain during this challenge, as well as the potential for different enantiomers, we are trying to get a handle on what to expect in that regard to help us prepare for when we actually do site visits, collect samples and bring them back. So it's helpful in that regard. So I just sort of wanted to bring that out as something that we would appreciate some forewarning and some foreknowledge of. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the answers.
Yeah, could I, if I could ask also, I think just following on what you had mentioned about the site visits, could you guys just go over the, I guess the format and the how the site visits will work and what I guess the requirements for that are?
Sure.
Jenny, sorry, I think if you want to pull up the application, there may be information there as well. Sorry, John.
Yeah, no problem. So the idea is that we know that these systems might be quite large and complicated and or potentially very hard to transport. So obviously, we're going to bring judges to the site to do the judging. Prior to judging, you will have submitted a packet that will give us the information to understand if you have, at least on paper, addressed what the challenge was about, and that you are saying, yes, we're ready to be judged. We have made some compounds that we believe could fit the different compounds that we ask for. And then if we look at all this and we're convinced, then we would have a site visit. And then that site visit will have judges come out, and we have what we're calling a 7-hour period for you to be able to generate enough sample for us to be able to do an analysis on that. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that when we get there, that you can essentially start your system. If you need 7 hours, that's fine. If you can do it in less, that's great. But you have 7 hours to produce a product that we can then take, under the supervision of the judges to make sure that everybody's producing it right then and there. And then we'll essentially take that sample and we'll chip it back for analysis. And during that time, it'll not only be the sample, but the judges will do a characterization of the different criteria regarding your system to get a very clear idea of a number of different factors that will weigh in on the scoring decision. So it's planned to be a one-day visit with sort of an end-to-end, start the system, end the system, collect the sample, and then we're done.
Could I ask, do you mean by start the system as in like, so just to give some background, if we're running a continuous process, like a continuous flow CO2 conversion process, would start the system be defined as we pause the system before you guys show up and then we start mass flows when when the start of the 7-hour happens? Or do we have to shut everything down, cool everything down, and go through the whole plant operational turn on? Or could we just stop mass flows and start mass flows? I guess I'm trying to figure out what the definition of start the system is.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Yeah, and we had thought about that. So it'll be fine. We're not trying to get startup time criteria associated with this. We just want to make sure that the samples that are in the line are generated when we're there. So if it's clear that if you want to keep the system in a operating state but not have mass flows, and then we start having mass flows and obvious product production while we're there, that would be suitable.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And we have one follow-up question in the chat box as well. So I'll go ahead and read that off for you, John. As a follow-up to that, what scope of analytical instruments and methods will NASA use to detect, identify, and quantify product streams? And for demonstration purposes of proof of concept, does the process need to be fully automated?
Okay, I'll take the second part first. Your system does not need to be automated. That's fine if it's a manual process. Processes that are highly automated already, that will likely be a plus, but it is not a requirement on that at all. In terms of how are we going to analyze the samples, we do have an analytical lab here at NASA Ames Research Center. And we have a number of different sophisticated instruments, including GCMS. We are working on the ability to differentiate between different enantiomers should that need arise of sugars. And we are hoping to understand how you have done your analysis. So that's part of what we ask in the report for judging is, how did you do your analysis? And the reason being that, as you might imagine, there might be quite a bit of different types of compounds in all the different samples that we might get. Some might be solid, some might be liquid, some might be mixtures. Some might be very specific to a compound. And some might have dozens of different compounds in there. We're only going to look at the 5 that you say that you're making at a maximum because of the analytical issues associated with it. We were, more than likely, we're going to be using a GCMS, type of scenario to do this. Although depending, we might be using HPLC systems as well. It really kind of depends on sort of the pre-work that we do to make sure that we can analyze those compounds correctly for your sample. So there will be somewhat of a customization for each sample that we get to make sure that we are very accurately analyzing for the compounds that you indicate that you're making. did that answer your question?
Yes, they said, thank you, that's helpful to know.
Great.
I have a quick question about if we're making a racemic mixture. It says that the amount of D will be subtracted. I guess how would it work out if we're making a racemic mixture, or if we're making a racemic mixture and then purifying it on site before, as part of our 7 hours, of production? Would you just essentially follow the procedure that we use to characterize for example, if we were using circular dichroism, would you guys use CD to figure out the ratios and then subtract them? I guess how would that scoring affect? How would that analysis affect scoring?
Yeah. So the idea is that we're really trying to avoid L enantiomers because they're not used by biology. So we would essentially, as we do the analysis and we can differentiate between the two, the L enantiomer portion would not be counted as mass produced. We would only count the D. If you do produce a lot of, if you have a 50% racemic mixture, it's actually proven not to really be a very good substrate for microbes. So it's something that we are not looking for. That's why we are sort of pushing the D side of things. But essentially, because this is a complicated issue, we're essentially going to subtract off the L from the mass produced, and we'll count the D.
Thank you.
Sure.
Judy, it looks like we have another question in the box there.
Yes, thank you. We are curious what the preferred source of CO2, pure bottled or Mars profile with known contaminants. Will this be worth extra points? Might need
we haven't. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just making sure you understood the question well enough.
Yes, I did. Yeah, thank you. We haven't created any requirements on the CO2 system, other than it's CO2 is the only carbon source that's coming into the system. So you're absolutely allowed to use pure bottled CO2 if you want. If your system works better without any other contaminants, and that's what you want to use, that's fine. We will have the capability to provide relatively pure CO2 to these systems. If your system can work on a Martian mixture, we haven't indicated that that's exactly, in terms of bonus points to that, but that would be looked favorably upon this, upon the judging. But should it cause problems for you in your system, then I would recommend just using pure CO2 and getting the best results and the best yields with the least amount of contaminants and or problems.
I have another question, if I may. It's regarding the quantification of the processed products, and I was wondering how you're planning on doing this. Is this going to be based on the mass of the products or the molarity? If you could please clarify. Thank you.
Yeah, so we're planning on trying to develop a mass basis. of the different products. And again, you're essentially going to be telling us what compounds that you are making and that you want us to test for, and that's up to 5 different compounds within a mixture. So we will be determining concentration in our final sample, and then convert that to a mass. And the production rate essentially is going to be something that we'll be able to glean off of the system. But we're not really talking about a production rate per se, because some people's systems might be quite small, and that's fine, or some might be larger. So that's not really what we're looking for right now. We're really mostly looking for the ability to make high concentrations of sugars, particularly at the higher order, six carbon sugars, and preferably glucose. So it will be a mass basis, ultimately.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And of course, if you come up with a question that you did not get answered on today's call, you can always send it to, email it to us at solutions@co2conversionchallenge.org, and we'll get you an answer as quickly as we can. Again, a reminder that the midpoint progress reports can be submitted anytime between March 1st and March 31st, but no later than 5 p.m. Central Time on March 31st. And your application must be submitted, emailed to solutions@co2conversionchallenge.org no later than June 5th at 5 p.m. Central as well.
Lynn, there's just, this is Dawn. I'd just like to also add for the group a little, I know one question was about the on-site judging. We currently have a tentative schedule. Just for your information, we're hoping to make those on-site visits during the month of July-ish. So just for your planning purposes, maybe towards the end of June and or in July, maybe even at the latest, the 1st of August, that would be when the judge would want to come out and take a look at your system and collect the sample, et cetera. And as we get closer to the June 5th deadline, Lynn, I believe we had planned to have one more participant webinar, is that correct? Where we sort of go over this more specific type of thing.
Yeah, we certainly can have another, that is our intent, to have another participant webinar a little bit closer to the June 5th deadline, so probably in that March timeframe. But we wanted to make sure that we had this one prior to the progress report being due, in case anyone had questions about that.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and then also Jenny is showing the timeline on the screen here. That's been updated to show you kind of the specific time frame that things will be happening.
So this is Muncie.
Hi, Muncie.
I just want to say thank you to everybody for everything you're doing, and I'm looking forward to all the competition.
All right. Well, are there any other questions? We'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, we'll let everyone have their half hour of time back. All right. John, any closing words?
Just a big thank you for all of you for stepping up to this challenge. we're all very excited to see what comes out of it, and we're hope that you are all wildly successful, and that we have a very hard time judging who's best. And good luck to you all. And again, our deep appreciation for all your efforts here.
Thank you, John. And just for everyone who's still on the call, we have recorded this and we will be sharing it with all of the registrants. So again, thank you for participating, and please let us know if you have any further questions.